The thing with rock biopics is the first thing you have to get right is you have to get somebody who can act and can, pull off the charisma of the star that you're making the film about. I mean, I've always referred to Gary Busey's performance in the Buddy Holly story as being one of my favourites because I think he fulfills that criteria. And I do think Jennifer Hudson is terrific. Quite a lot of the film is musical set pieces that are kind of restaging famous musical performances. And you know that you're in really safe hands because it's not just that she can sing, but it's that she can perform in a way that captures the essence of, of what those great Aretha Franklin performances were. I thought it was very interesting that she talked about working with a motion coach who was talking about the way in which Aretha Franklin would stand in a room, the way in which she would sing from a certain part of her body. I mean, when I was watching, I've seen the film a couple of times now. When I was watching it, I was making like a couple of notes about the physical performance, about the fact that she gets that thing about the head slightly turned back, the eyes slightly closed, very wide mouth in certain things, but also there's a moment when she's doing something and she just does a little finger click, and it's uncanny how perfect it is. It's not an imitation. It's not but it's a performance because the finger click doesn't even seem like it's rehearsed. I mean, I'm sure it is, but it looks like it's a natural thing. I liked, so I thought her performance was great. She is terrific. The stuff that worked best for me was also, as she said in that interview, the smart thing about casting musicians to do scenes in which you've got musicians working on songs. And so when the Muscle Shoals stuff happens, and when they are trying to figure out how to make a song that sounds like one thing, sound like a song that sounds like another thing, again, I always refer back to that thing in the Buddy Holly story when he says there's a sound in my head and it's nothing like anything we have here. And during that sequence when they're in Muscle Shoals and they start reworking the songs, with this group of white musicians who look like the least likely people to be able to play this stuff anyway, I thought that worked really well. And actually, at its best, that reminded me of some of the scenes from Love and Mercy, which is one of my favourite of this genre of movies, because it's, it gets that thing about you actually believe that what you're watching is musicians deconstructing a song or putting a song together, constructing a song. On the less positive front, the film feels fairly ordinary in terms of the way in which it tells its pop biopic story. I mean, there are elements. This is one of the problems with this genre is no matter how different the stories are, they quite often seem to share the same story beats. And so, there is not much in the storytelling that is as remarkable as the story itself. It's also a very well-behaved film. So there are things in the life story that it tells that it kind of, it's not that it doesn't, confront the fact that, there is abuse throughout this life, but it seems slightly uncertain as to what to do with that, whether it's the young Aretha as a child, who incidentally, that is an absolutely astonishing performance. When she's in her younger years, it's Sky Dakota's Turner, who is brilliant. But if you compare it to things like, What's Love Got to Do With It, which is a much tougher film about domestic abuse, it's there, but it doesn't really know how to handle it. It's interesting that way back in the past of this project, there were versions of this which theatrical show that it's the director is from a stage background. You had groundbreaking success on Broadway, and the script has been worked and reworked, and originally Callie Curry was working on it, and obviously what they were trying to do was kind of find a way of making the script work in the way that this story wanted to be told. So now it's Tracy Scott Wilson's script with Callie Curry sharing an original story credit. But I do think the film itself is kind of unremarkable. So what you have is some great performances. I mean, not just that great performance in the centre, but some great performances. Mark Maron is terrific as Jerry Wexler, incidentally. I think he does that really well. There's a very fine performance by Forrest Whitaker as Aretha Franklin's father. He really manages to get that thing about, he seems to see his child's God-given gifts as given to him, for he is, he's the reverend Franklin, and there's it does get that ambiguity stuff well, but it's weird. It's like a strange combination of great performance, some great set pieces, but I have to say fairly ordinary storytelling in terms of the film itself. So the film is far less remarkable than either its starring performances or indeed than Aretha Franklin. Do you broadly agree?
Worth seeing because the studio sequences are great, and the live performance in the church when they're doing the live album is amazing. But I do think it feels too long. It's 2:25 or something like that, and I didn't think it was very well directed. Yeah, I agree. There were so many different. I think a tighter focus might have helped. They were trying to get everything in, and every conversation had to be significant. Oh, that's an important person who just happens to be dropping by saying something important at an important time. But the key. Imagine if they got all of that right and they had a central performance that just didn't work. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the things I should say is you said 2.5 hours is too long. I don't think it's the length is. I think how long a film isn't to do with how long it actually is. It's to do with how long it feels. Okay, but you're right. It feels too long, and that is a problem. It kind of feels like, okay, we are trudging through the stuff. So unremarkable film, but remarkable central performance.